Welcome to the Evidence Room, detectives. Today, we are treating the Cambridge AS and A-Level Arabic 9680 Paper 4 like an active, high-stakes crime scene. I'm your lead detective for this explainer, and we are about to forensically deconstruct exactly what the examiners are searching for when they comb through your answers. If you have ever stared at that strict 500 to 600 word limit and felt completely paralyzed, wondering how to fit a massive syllabus into such a tight suspect profile, you are exactly where you need to be. We are going to examine the official classified examiner data to uncover the exact structural blueprint for success. Now, in our precinct, we have two types of rookies I see all the time. We have Agent Alex, a highly procedural investigator who gathers mountains of physical evidence and raw facts, but completely fails to build a coherent case motive because of a lack of high-level analysis. And then we have Agent Sam, a fast-acting maverick who jumps to immediate conclusions, skipping vital forensic confirmation steps and completely missing the command word constraints. Throughout this investigation, we are going to look at their mistakes so you don't make them yourself. So grab your notepad, because we are going to crack this case wide open.
I want you to look very closely at this piece of evidence. This is a direct quote pulled straight from the principal examiner reports, and it is the absolute smoking gun of this entire investigation. The report states, "The classic mistake is providing generic answers not specific to the question context." This tells us immediately that the single biggest hurdle you face in that exam room is not a lack of textbook knowledge. No, the real trap is failing to apply your knowledge to unfamiliar, highly specific contexts. Think about Agent Alex for a second. Alex walks into the interrogation room and just recites the entire penal code to the suspect. It's a generic data dump. The examiners absolutely do not want a textbook summary. They want to see your brain working in real time, actively cross-examining the specific scenario right in front of you. If you give them a pre-memorized, generic answer, you're essentially leaving your fingerprints all over the crime scene, but giving them absolutely no motive. It instantly throws your case out of court.
Okay, let's dive right into our investigative roadmap. We are breaking this case down into 5 crucial phases. First, unlocking paper 4. Second, the core principles. Third, technical methodology. Fourth, critical analysis strategy. And finally, top examiner warnings.
Let's open the file on Section 1, Unlocking Paper 4 and Mastering That 500 to 600 Word Blueprint.
Because your word count is so incredibly strict, you do not have the luxury of just writing down everything you know and hoping the examiner finds a clue in the mess. This paper requires a precise, systematic, and forensic formula. And that formula revolves entirely around what we call the method marks strategy. Listen closely, because this is where Agent Sam always messes up. Sam just wants to arrest the suspect and skip the paperwork. But examiners do not just award marks for reaching a final correct conclusion. They are highly focused on the procedural process you took to get there. They are grading your methodology. You need to leave a crystal clear step-by-step trail of intellectual evidence. How did you get from point A to point B? Why does this piece of data logically lead to this specific outcome? If the examiner cannot track your analytical logic string step by step, you lose the method marks, and ultimately you lose the case. You have to prove exactly how you arrived at your verdict.
Let's move into Section 2, the core principles. This is the theoretical architecture you need to build a bulletproof argument.
To secure those method marks we just talked about, we have to look at the official assessment objectives. They target 3 very distinct cognitive domains: knowledge and understanding, analysis, and evaluation. Now let's go back to our rookies. Agent Alex is fantastic at knowledge and understanding. Alex will fill an entire whiteboard with rote definitions and historical dates. But successful candidates cannot just demonstrate one domain. You have to prove competence across all 3. If you only memorize the textbook, you are only ever going to get the baseline marks. To truly crack this paper and reach the elite tiers, you have to transition from simply knowing the facts to actually analyzing them, and then ultimately evaluating their worth. You have to weigh the evidence, expose the gaps in the alibi, and make a definitive judgment based on the parameters of the case.
This brings us to a critical showdown in our investigation: superficial breadth versus analytical depth. I was observing Alex and Sam in the evidence room the other day, debating how to write a model paragraph. Alex wanted to overload the text block with long lists of standard textbook definitions. That's superficial breadth. It covers a lot of ground, but it's incredibly shallow. Sam, on the other hand, was trying to fight for an analytical logic string to secure the high-tier marking bands before the exam clock ran out. And Sam had the right idea, even if the execution is usually rushed. The academic benchmarks for this exam strongly prioritize logical, structured reasoning over a superficial shotgun approach. You need deep, evaluative arguments. The examiner wants to see how deeply you can dig into a single, high-value point, not how many basic, low-level descriptive statements you can cram onto the page. A descriptive statement just tells me what happened. An evaluative argument tells me why it matters to the case.
Now, I'm going to share a classified secret weapon with you. The principal examiner reports explicitly state that candidates who successfully reference cross-topic connections achieve significantly higher marks. This is how you show you aren't just looking at one isolated piece of evidence, but you are seeing the entire conspiracy board. When you can seamlessly integrate other areas of the syllabus and demonstrate the causal relationships between completely different topics, you are showing a master-level grasp of the theoretical architecture. It proves you understand the ecosystem of the subject, not just the individual definitions. This right here is the master key to unlocking the absolute top marking bands.
Let's turn the page to Section 3, Technical Methodology and our Procedural Framework. Case file freeze. Before we reveal this top-end paragraph structure to help you clear your upcoming Cambridge sessions, make sure your intelligence feed is fully secure. Take a second right now to subscribe to Ace the Exams, at Ace the Exams, and turn on all notifications so you never miss our weekly forensic exam updates. Whether you are cracking cases at IGCSE, O-levels, AS, or A-levels, we are your headquarters for elite exam strategy. Okay, let's unfreeze the file. Look at this exact procedural path for handling complex data interpretation. First, you extract from texts and tables. Second, you interpret relationships. Third, you draw evidence-based conclusions. When Alex and Sam hit a roadblock trying to write their paragraph, I had to step in and give them a structural framework to anchor their data. We call it the Peel matrix. Point, evidence, explanation, link. You make your point, you extract your evidence from the text, you explain the relationship and what it means, and you link it back to the specific context of the question. We literally made them rewrite their response out loud, line by line, using this exact framework until it was a perfectly balanced, bulletproof block of text. You cannot skip straight to the conclusion, you have to walk the examiner down this exact three-step forensic path.
And remember, in this precinct, presentation is not optional. The examiner reports heavily stress that presentation follows strict, non-negotiable conventions. We are talking about proper headings, using the exact correct academic terminology, appropriate formats, and clear, legible annotation. If your professional presentation skills are sloppy, you are going to bleed marks, regardless of how brilliant your internal logic might be. Think of this as maintaining a clean, highly organized evidence board, where every single photograph and document is perfectly labeled and pinned. If the board is a mess, the judge throws it out.
Let's escalate this to Section 4, Critical Analysis Strategy. This is all about evaluative thinking. Critical analysis is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but in the context of Paper 4, it is a highly specific protocol. It requires you to actively question assumptions, deliberately consider entirely different perspectives, and rigorously justify every single decision you make with hard, undeniable evidence. Elite candidates don't just accept a witness statement at face value, they put it under a microscope and brutally interrogate it. Now, I am handing the investigation files over to you for a live forensic check. Welcome to the interactive viewer evidence room. Challenge number 1, the visual clue scan. Imagine a complex source data chart or a dense text case study on the screen in front of you. You have a 60-second mental countdown timer ticking away. Your job isn't to read every single word. Your job is to extract the single highest-yielding core trend before that display clears. That is what critical analysis requires in the field: rapid, accurate identification of the true motive hidden in the noise. To execute that successfully, examiners use a very specific analytical checklist to see if you can evaluate evidence quality. You need to identify the limitations of the data. Ask yourself, what is this chart deliberately not telling me? You must identify the underlying assumptions being made by the author. You need to explore alternative interpretations. Could this data mean something completely different? And finally, assess how all of these factors affect your ultimate conclusion. Now for challenge number 2, identify the counterfeit answer. Imagine looking at a medium-tier student response paragraph right now. Your job as a detective is to locate the exact sentence where false logic or just a bunch of descriptive fluff destroys the overall integrity of the mark. Usually, it's the sentence where the student stops questioning the data and just starts summarizing it. If you run your own evidence through this 4-step limitation checklist, your evaluation will become virtually indestructible under cross-examination. When the case file explicitly asks you for a comparative analysis, mere lists are entirely unacceptable. You must identify both the similarities and the differences. But here's the critical part. You cannot just list them side by side in two isolated columns. You have to use advanced comparative connectives to bridge those similarities and differences. You have to actively support each side with text evidence, and then, crucially, you must draw a definitive conclusion about their relative importance. It is a structured, meticulous weighing of the scales of justice. It is an argument, not an inventory.
We are now entering the final phase of our investigation. Section 5, Top Examiner Warnings and How to Prevent Them.
Pay extremely close attention to this alert. We are about to look at the actual documented mistakes cited in the principal examiner reports that will instantly destroy your mark integrity. Falling into these traps is like handing your badge over to the chief.
Here are the top 3 fatal errors that plague candidates every single year. Mistake number 1, confusing cause and effect. You must be mathematically precise on what is actually driving an outcome versus what is merely a resulting symptom. Mistake number 2, forgetting format and presentation. We already covered this, but ignoring the strict technical conventions is a massive, unforced error that examiners have zero patience for. And mistake number 3, the most critical one that we exposed right at the start of this briefing, providing generic answers that are not specific to the context. You must physically link every single point, every piece of data, and every analytical thought directly back to the specific scenario provided in the case file.
To make sure you don't panic and fall into that generic answer trap when the clock is ticking, you need an active in-exam mental checklist. Here is our recommended protocol. Create a custom mnemonic using the core principles we've covered and write it at the top of your paper the second your exam starts. Let me distill this entire session into 3 universal rules you can use. First, the 3-step question scan. Always decode the exact command words before you write a single letter. Second, the clock budget allocation. Never spend high-tier time on low-yield descriptive summaries. And third, the final evidence audit. Always run a mandatory review checklist to guarantee your analysis is anchored to the context.
We have successfully compiled our final high-scoring text block, and we're looking at a 100% case resolution score today. We've cracked the blueprint. We know that method marks, analytical depth, cross-topic connections, and rigid context application are the non-negotiable keys to this paper. So I am leaving you with this final vital interrogation question. Take a hard look at the last practice essay you wrote. Read it through with a forensic lens. Are your points truly, genuinely context-specific, or could they theoretically apply to any generic question on the entire syllabus? If it is the latter, it is time to overhaul your strategy immediately. Before you head back out into the field, remember to subscribe to Ace the Exams at Ace the Exams, click that notification bell for a weekly grade masterclasses, and drop a comment below sharing exactly which Cambridge subject and level, IGCSE O, A, S, or A level, you are preparing to conquer next. Case closed. Good luck out there, detectives.